Here's the shocking way you can manifest closing super high-ticket programs. In today's episode with Kelle Sparta, and she's a transformational shaman. So Kelle, please tell us, how can entrepreneurs manifest closing super high-ticket programs?
Manifestation Empress podcast
with Lily Patrascu shares manifestation strategies to live your dream life.
Well, so there's a lot of pieces and parts that go into manifesting a super high ticket program, right? And being able to close a deal at that level requires a lot of different pieces be in place. So the first one, the very first foundational one that is there for everybody is, do you believe that you bring sufficient value in order to be able to deliver on what you're charging? And if you don't believe that, then you're never going to be able to close that deal, right? You absolutely have to have that. Second thing is you have to not be intimidated by the person you try to sell it to, because if you are, you're not going to get that deal. Third thing is you can't be desperate for the business, because desperation stinks and people can feel it. And if you are, you're not going to close that deal. And you and I talked a little bit before the beginning of this show about if you never actually put out the request for a proposal or the, whatever it is that you're doing, if you don't deliver on the proposal, you're not going to get the deal, because if you don't give them anything to buy, then they're not going to buy it either, right? So you've got to actually follow through on the opportunity, right? And so, I've worked with salespeople for years. And so there's a lot of resistances that go into this. There's a lot of disorganization that can actually impact the ability as well, right? Because if you are disorganized, then you won't do your follow-up and you won't do your follow-through, and you won't be able to do what you need to do in order to close your deals. So that's just sort of a general overview. We had talked about maybe doing a little bit with you and what's going on with you so that we could, show people how this sort of works.
Thank you. So what I find is, for example, that I have a program for 25, 50, and 100K. And I've been easily selling programs for 10K. Now, when it comes to 100K, I have pitched to some people, and I have found that even though they were ultra high net worth, I have found that I think that the higher the program was, I experienced this kind of complete fear. Okay, where I'm feeling this almost this thing around my neck that is stopping me from doing it. Now, one interesting thing is that because I was verbally abused and also beaten when I was a child, when I was from 4 years old until 18, every day I was beaten. And then my grandma used to say, you're stupid, fat, and ugly. And when I tried to cry, she would beat me more. So I kind of learned to suppress myself. And I find that even when I try to speak, or when I try to speak on large stages, or when I try to do anything that involves any sort of visibility where I become, you can say, the superstar in some way, I self-sabotage. So I get opportunities all the time. I get amazing people. People come to me and they ask me for, can you help me with this or that? But when it comes to the super high ticket stuff, I get I don't want to say crippled, because I get paralyzed in terms of not actually taking the action. People ask me, okay, send me the proposal, and I don't have a clue why I don't.
Okay. So what you're describing is a complicated, interrelated issue, which I love. So we're going to pick it apart. Okay. So let's start with the fear, because the fear is the thing that's causing you to freeze, right? And so fear is typically a function of not knowing what the outcome is going to be, right? It's the fear of the unknown. We may think we fear X, Y, or Z, but it's usually I don't know how I would deal with it. I don't have a plan for what I would do to deal with this thing if it happened, right? And so it is the fear of us not being able to respond appropriately to the scenario. And so the very first thing you want to do is you want to address the fear. And so if I were to ask you, what is the fear that is keeping you from sending out those proposals? What would that be?
It's unclear. I mean, I can say that I've had disappointments with some clients in the past where, let's say, it's because I'm a people pleaser. And let's say if someone pays 10,000 for something, I'm going to deliver at least 100,000 worth of service for it just because I want to please. And I've done that in the past where I burnt myself, and I found that some of those people were still not pleased. So it's almost like I'm afraid that they will beat me in a way, that they will treat me badly, that they will not appreciate my work. And that I will try really hard and I will like push mountains to make them successful, and they won't know how long I have worked. And this has happened in the past with people where I've worked really hard, and let's say in 20% of the cases, they didn't understand it until they started working with other people, charging more and delivering next to nothing.
Yeah. Okay. So 2 things here. Okay. So the first one is, when you deliver $100,000 worth of value on a $10,000 purchase, you overwhelm the person with too much information. And that is not actually over delivering. That is crushing them with information. And it's not actually better than just delivering the $10,000 worth, because people cannot take that in at that level. And I had this same problem in my past, so I totally understand it, because I have just like so much to say, and I just want to have everybody have everything yesterday, and I get it, but you have to deliver it at the rate that they can consume it. And so that's got to be the limitation on what you give, and that's for their benefit, not for yours, right? I mean, it is for yours as well, because you will have happier clients if you don't overwhelm them and crush them with the information. Okay. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, when you are afraid that they're going to beat you, it's because you're afraid you can't stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
And so the practice there becomes, how do I stand up for myself? How do I not put myself in a position where I have to defend myself all the time? And how do I not shrink away from the confrontation? And so the answer to that is that you have to engage confrontation in your life on a regular basis. So being a people pleaser, it's likely that you are knuckling under a lot in your life. That you are just being like, yeah, it'll be fine. I'll let it go. You have to stop doing that. You have to start speaking early and speaking often, because what happens when you knuckle under like that over and over again is, the other side of that is that when you hit your breaking point, and you do every time, there's always a breaking point where you're like, enough, right? I have knuckled under enough. Oh, my microphone's fallen over. Then when you hit that point, you just like melt down and scream at people, right? Because you've just hit the wall. Either that, or you just hermit and you run away from everybody. That there's one of 2 responses to that, right? And you may vacillate back and forth between them, depending upon what you're dealing with. And that's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for your relationships. And so the key is to speak early, speak often, and to engage confrontation at a small level to build your confidence. And so that means when somebody hurts your feelings, you go, ow, that hurt my feelings. And that's all you have to say. Just be like, that hurt my feelings. And then, or if they stepped over your boundaries. I'm a big fan of the phrase, what part of the word no did you not understand? That's my happy place. It's like, I said no, you kept coming. Now I'm going to ask you why you didn't understand the word. Right? So just simple things. And you can practice this in your emails. I know that you are probably getting solicited by a million different marketers all the time, because I am all the time. And one of the best ways to practice your no is to practice it in those scenarios, because there is 0 risk to that. Right? There is no risk. What's the worst they're going to do? They're going to come back and yell at you, and you're going to hit block. Right? There's absolutely no problem with that. So one of the best ways to practice your no is to simply be like, no. Instead of ghosting all those people who send you unsolicited things, you just respond back and say, no, this isn't for me. And then when they try again, because they usually do, when they try again, you say, I said no, stop asking. And then when they try again, you block them. right? But this is you building your belief in your ability to defend yourself. Because so long as you are in this, it's kind of like the scared rabbit energy, right? You're in that prey energy, right? So long as you're standing in that energy, there's going to be a certain percentage of the clients that you will attract into your life that are going to be predators who will take advantage. And they will not be happy no matter what in order to get you to give more. And it's just a manipulation on their part, right? So this is one of those things that you clear out of your system to clear your business of it, but also to give you a higher quality of life. And so what you have to do is practice standing up for yourself, not physically, although that may come into play. Have you done any self-defense classes?
No.
Okay, so that could be helpful as well. But I feel like it's more the emotional abuse that's the issue for you here. And so when you're, it's one of those things that people are like, oh, well, physical abuse is so much worse. No, they've actually proven psychologically that emotional abuse is worse and harder to overcome than physical abuse, because at least with physical abuse, you see bruises, right? There's something to prove that there was a problem, and you don't have people going, oh, you're just a precious little snowflake who can't take any. No, you were being abused. There's a difference, right? And so when you are doing this work and you are standing up for yourself emotionally, you build the belief in your ability to do that. And as your belief in your ability to defend yourself grows, your fear of people finding fault reduces. Okay. And then on top of it, there's this other piece of, we have this thing where we try to control the world around us. Right? Because when you're afraid of what's going to happen, you always are in the desire to control. And so you go into perfectionism, and you go into, trying to make sure everything is exactly the way it's supposed, and everybody did what they were supposed to do. There, you get into micromanagement in your business and things like that. And all of these things snowball, right? As you begin to accept that you don't have control over other people, then you will begin to be able to let go of the perfectionism. You're still going to have a high standard that you're holding yourself to. That's a value issue, and that's a different issue over here. But there's a way to address that too. But over here, you've got okay, I can't control everybody, so I'm going to set an intention for what the outcome is. I'm going to let everybody who works for me know that this is what's going on, and this is what's expected of them, and then I'm going to treat them like adults and expect them to deliver on what they have, which is something that happens when you're in perfectionism, is that you tend to infantilize your subordinates, because you're like, well, they can't do it the way I would do it, and they can't be as perfect as I am. Hold yourself to an impossible standard. You hold yourself to a ridiculous standard. You hold them to an impossible standard, and because it's not ridiculous, you think it's reasonable, right? And it's so that's what happens, right? So I'm making assumptions for you, but you're nodding your head, so I'm assuming that's accurate. Based on these patterns, I've seen this a lot. Okay, so build your confidence in your ability to defend yourself, and that's going to help a lot. Now, there's also, I understand that that's the case if you're having somebody who may or may not be upset with you. But let's go back to I'm not sending the proposal question. Okay. So as you're feeling into that, what is the worst case scenario? Because this is what we do when we have trauma. We assume worst case scenario in all circumstances, right? So what is the worst case scenario if you send the proposal?
I think for me, I'm imagining that I would somehow break the relationship because they would be offended that the prices are so expensive. I think that is the worst for me.
Okay. So that says to me that you feel like what you're selling isn't worth the prices that you're offering, that you're asking. Because if you told me, so there's two different pieces here. One is that you're not sure you can deliver on what you're asking for. And two, you're not seeing the value to them, right? So as a business owner, if somebody comes to me and says, spend $100,000 and I'll make you $1 million, I'm going to be like, I'll do that all day long, right? That is totally worth it. Hell, 100,000 to 200,000, I'll do that all day long, right? And so the key is, are you showing the ROI, and are you certain you can deliver the ROI, right? Because sometimes we get into our own heads, right? And you're just like, what if they say it's not worth it? Right? And that's our inner dialogue, is like, what if I'm not worth it? Right? That's a worthiness issue. It's a not good enough issue, right? And so I've got so much to say. Okay, so worthiness. Let me talk to you about worthiness first off. Okay, so there's a difference between value and worthiness. Value is, am I delivering the value for what I'm charging? It's a trade, right? Did you pay, and did you get what you paid for, right? Worthiness, on the other hand, is absolute garbage. Okay? There is no such thing as worthiness. It is a manipulation used to make you feel smaller. In actuality, we are ultimately creative beings. We are part of the divine creator, which is omnipotent and omniscient and able to do anything it wants. The idea that we would be worthy of something that is already us, because we are everything and everything is us, that does not compute. The math doesn't math on that, right? You're sitting there and you're going, wait a minute, what? How can I be worthy of something I already am? The worthiness does not exist in that construct. And it is used in the duality level, where we're down here on the planet, to try and manipulate us into doing more, being more, putting up with more, taking more abuse. Okay. Worthiness is not a thing. Okay. So I want you to unwind that from your awareness. Okay. Now, the not good enough piece is obviously, your grandmother gave you all of these acknowledgments of, all of this, not acknowledgement, but like abuse, right? All of these, she programmed your mind to say that you were never good enough. And interestingly, we talked before the show about the fact that I look like her. So I hope that in the process of saying these things to you, I can help unwind that, because I do look like her. And so there's going to be some of that. So I'm going to take all those back. I want you to look me in the eyes right now. And I want you to see her in me. And I want you to say, I want you to hear me say this. I take it all back. I'm so sorry. You did not deserve that. You deserve to be loved and cherished and told that you were wonderful, because you are. You are amazing and successful and beautiful and fabulous and so smart. And you have so much to give to the world. And there's absolutely no reason that I should have ever said anything different. And I apologize. Take a deep breath. Sometimes we need to hear what we need to hear. And, I know you're on air right now, and so it's kind of hard to take it all in. But I would encourage you to go back after this is over and rewatch and take that in at a deeper level. Okay. This is the language you need to start using with yourself. Okay. Are you looking at yourself in the mirror and saying positive things to yourself?
Not looking in the mirror all the time, but when I pass, then yes, I do think appreciative things about myself, thoughts.
Good. Because this is one of the things we oftentimes, especially parents, give us these negative messages, and then we get stuck with them, and we go to the parent trying to get them to give us something different. And they're not going to. Okay. It's a very rare instance when a parent has an awakening and goes, oh, I was a terrible person and I shouldn't have done that. Right. Usually they just defend where they are and they're not going to come back at it. You have to give that to yourself. Right. And I got the impression when we spoke that your grandmother has passed. So that's not going to happen, because she's already crossed over. Right. So let's recap for a minute. Okay, let's go back. So we've talked about the fear and developing your own ability to protect yourself. We've talked about letting go of the idea of worthiness. We've talked about over delivering to the point where it's too much, and where you're delivering so much that it's now a negative delivery, because they can't take it all in. And they feel that, right? And they also feel out of balance, right? Because you're creating, if they can take it in, you're creating karmic debt. right? Because you've delivered way more than they paid for, and now they're uncomfortable with that. If they can't take it in, now they're feeling FOMO because they couldn't take it all in and they feel like they didn't have enough time. And now they're just like, well, now what do I do with it? I feel like there's so much that you said that I didn't quite grasp and all this stuff, right? And I'm kind of doing that to you on this show right now. So I want you to experience that because I'm giving you a lot more than I would normally do in a very short period of time with someone. So I want you to experience because it's kind of a lot, right? So the thing that you want to be aware of is you want to deliver 110% of what you promised, right? And you want to promise enough that when you deliver 110%, it's not overwhelming. So you need to make sure that from their side, it's consumable. In general, people like us need to deliver half of what we are delivering initially, what we want to deliver, because what we want to deliver is probably overwhelming.
Yeah,
Okay?
I would also say it's overwhelming to me. Like when I see it, what I have to deliver for that, it's overwhelming to me. Like I feel like, oh my God, I have to do all this for that.
Yes.
And I'm not getting paid a bazillion pounds.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that's the other reason why you're not doing the RFPs, not doing the proposals, right? It's because you are looking at it and going, oh, I'm tired, right? You're just like, do I really want to? I don't think I want to do that. It's like, okay, well then don't do that, right? Here's one. I'll tell you a secret that I learned recently. I did a retreat recently for the first time since COVID, right? And I designed it to be an education thing with some ritual involved, some energy movement and things like that. I was not intending it to be this like huge, amazing deal, right? It was meant to be something to give people an experience, but not to like totally change their life. That wasn't what I was promising, right? And every single person came back and going, oh my God, it totally changed my life, right? Now, why did that happen? It happened because I am who I am, and I let myself be in the flow, right? I didn't overpromise. I promised you'll have 3 hours of education and a ritual every day. That was my promise. And I delivered that. But I stayed in the moment. I stayed in the flow. I sat in my intuition and I told them, I said, don't get attached to the curriculum because it'll probably change. Don't get attached to what I say the ritual is going to be because it'll probably change. I'm going to be in the moment. This is going to be very fluid. It's going to be delivering to you what is in the space to deliver to you. And as a result, I was exactly where they needed to be the whole time. And I didn't have to work for it. Right? I didn't have 20 years ago when I started running these types of retreats, I would have spent 6 months designing and workshopping this huge event that would have taken 5 different facilitators and all this time. And, would have had to require that I have this space that I could own and so much stuff. And I would have had to bring props and all sorts of stuff, right? Just an insane amount of work. And I delivered the same transformation that I would have gotten from that by simply being in the flow. Okay. So you have a level of expertise that you're working with, and that level of expertise is within you. You aren't working at this level. You're not a beginner. I can feel that in you. You wouldn't be where you are now if you didn't have an integrated level of the expertise, right? So there are people who know things, and then there are people who are at the wisdom stage where it's gnosis, not knowing. Gnosis is you have it within you. Right? You're at the gnosis stage. Stop acting like you're at the knowledge stage. When you deliver, you need to deliver from the gnosis place. You need to be promising that they are leveraging your wisdom, not accessing your knowledge, because ChatGPT is going to take over the knowledge thing very quickly. It already has for a large extent, right? Wisdom, gnosis, is something ChatGPT does not have. That is something that is unique to you. And it's that level of work that is what gets you the higher income level. And that's what allows you to charge that, is because they're not just getting information. They're getting wisdom. That it isn't about knowing the stuff to say. It's about knowing the questions to ask. right? I always tell people, because I teach people how to access their intuition and stuff, right? I tell people that the quality of the question you ask determines the quality of the answer you get. And the difference between knowledge and gnosis is the quality of the question, right? Because you can go down knowledge pathways forever and not get to the right answer.
Thank you. So what's the first step towards actually closing one of these super high ticket programs of, let's say, 100K, considering at the moment, my current course of action is I don't send the proposals?
Right. So the first step would be to send the proposal, right? It would be the first step, right? And so here's what I'm going to say. And I think this particular piece is going to be super relevant to you. When I was first getting used to the idea that I was psychic, I got cornered to do some readings without a set of tarot cards with me or anything else. And I was like, oh, do this. A bunch of people I didn't know. And he was like, oh, finally just gave myself permission to be wrong. Right. I said, okay, I'll do this with the understanding that everything that comes out of my mouth is probably wrong. Okay. So I want you to give yourself permission to fail. Give yourself permission for them to say no. Give yourself permission for them to be upset about the amount, and make a plan for what you're going to do when they're upset about the amount. Okay. With the understanding that a negotiation skill is to be upset about the amount. Okay. So you need to read Getting to Yes. Okay. It's a negotiation book. If you haven't read it yet, you should. But if you know that part of the negotiation process is going when you see the price, then you don't have to take that as an upset. You take that as a negotiation tactic, right? And all you have to do is stand in your power and go, well, if it's not for you, it's not for you. That's the takeaway, right? And so if you pull back, they'll be like, because the fear of loss is greater than the desire for gain. So you go, well, if it's not for you, no big deal. And they'll be like, oh, but I didn't say that. It's like, I understand that it might have been more than you were expecting, but when you look at the ROI, absolutely worth it, right? That's the way to do it. And then you start asking, okay, what's the issue with the price? If there is, I stay in silence after you say absolutely worth it, because silence is golden. Once you've answered their objection, you need to shut up, right? Because it's on their plate to answer at that point, right? And so then they need to come back and say, well, it was more than I was expecting. Okay, but is it more than it's worth to you? And that's the one that makes you go when you say it, but you've got to be willing to say it. If you go in and you're not attached to closing the sale, if you're not in a need to make it happen. So there's an energy that happens when you go into any sort of sales process. And when you're in a need to make it happen, there's an energy hook that comes out of you, and try to hook them, and you try to manipulate them into saying yes. There's like this, we've all been in that sleazy salesperson receiving end where you can feel the person just trying to get their hooks in you, right? And that happens when you're attached to the outcome at the expense of the other person. When you are in an authentic place where you hold in your mind the fact that this is the best thing for them, you are clear that this is the best outcome for them, that they will never regret this purchase, that this is going to give them everything you've promised and more that they can't possibly see right now, because you're taking them to a new level of understanding, and they won't be able to see what they can see from that vista from down here where they are. When you can hold that clearly and be like, oh, yes, this is what you need. This is what is going to be perfect for you. And you can just stand there and say, okay, so what's between you and getting to this amazing space? Because, we've talked about this. This is what you want. This is what you need. This is where we're going. The ROI is definitely there. What's between you and there? What's standing in the way? And just be in curiosity, not in the need to close, right? Closing is something that happens organically when you've cleared the resistance to the change, right? And so when you can hold the vision for them and allow them to step into the vision, and whatever is in the way of them stepping in, to help just clear that away, and I get that. I see that. Yes. Let's look at this over here. Let's take care of that over there, whatever. Then that you empower them to make a choice that is powerful and in their own best interests that they're not going to regret later and have buyer's remorse and cancel the deal after the fact. When you try and manipulate and push somebody into making a decision, they will resent that. They will find a reason to be unhappy with it. They may cancel before they start. They will not be happy throughout the process because they didn't feel empowered in the process of making the decision. And the bigger the purchase, the more true that is.
Thank you. Tell us where entrepreneurs can find you.
Yes. KelleSparta.com. That's the easiest place to find me. Kelle, like you see it on the screen. There's a discovery call button right on the page. You just click that button and I'll help you walk through whatever it is that's keeping you from going where you need to go.
Follow me for more manifestation techniques.